right, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, good evening, good evening. On this, the Thursday edition of the BDL Show. Now, I call it the Thursday edition. Ordinarily, the show happens only on a Wednesday, but hey, with this being the last week of any shows that I'm doing, I just decided, heck, let's have a show every evening. So you get 2 installments of this beautiful Zulu mug on your screens. Morning edition, of course, is Vuganazo, that comes to you every morning from 7 a.m., where we break down what you should know for the news day ahead. And of course, you're catching me now every evening at 7 p.m. for the BDL show, as I bring a revolving door of guests, people you've seen on the show before, who provide that quality analysis you will get nowhere else. With that being said, welcome to it. Your only price of admission here on the BDL show is to hit that like button. Do it now. Whether you're watching this simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter. Speaking about watching it on YouTube, do me another favor. Subscribe to the channel, the Big Daddy Liberty channel. Make sure you subscribe to it. You do not want to miss the content that we're going to be beginning to roll out next year as I hit the road again, talking to you, the faith, flag, family, and freedom type citizens. Time, of course, that I'm back in my natural element, talking to people on the street. With that being said, you'll find out where and when I'll be in your part of South Africa by going to our website. There it is, BigDaddyLiberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge some financial support to the show. We're going out on a limb next year. We're going to be doing this solo, of course. So your financial support will be absolutely important. We're looking to set up a BDL club of sorts where between 50 to 100 Rand a month, you can be a part of the BDL club. All of that details and how you can find a preferred payment method on the website. That's BigDaddyLiberty.com. Now, with that being said, enough with that jibber jabber. Let's get to our guest for this evening's show. He is part of the Daily Friend publication. That's www.dailyfriend.co.za. You have familiar face, great analysis. You guys are, I know he's a firm favorite on the show. I'm talking, of course, about Marius Roodt. There he is on screen. Marius, Baba, good evening.
How's it, Sifle? And hello to the listeners and the viewers.
Good to have you on. And in this one is effectively the penultimate show on the BDL show. Marius, I just decided, hell, let me bring on my friends from the usual Libertarian friends on a one-on-one basis as we unpack this interesting year in various topics. I must be honest, the ANC 55th conference has been dominating this week, but we're going to take a bit of a different tact with you, staying with politics and broader issues. Let's begin though with sports. I know you are a cricket buff, and I'm sure the comment section is going to become rather lit now for those who unfortunately have had a relatively disappointing cricket year, Marius, with the Proteas and even some domestic leagues. You know, before we get into the politics of cricket South Africa, what's going on with our cricket, dude? Why are we not seeing a comparative excellent performance as has been the case with rugby, for example?
I think it's, to be fair to the Proteas, we haven't done, if you take a holistic view at the team, they haven't done that badly. We're third on the World Test Championship. We obviously had a terrible T20 World Cup where we didn't even make it to the semi-finals, losing to the Netherlands. But we started off the year well. We beat India at home, and India's obviously a very good team at the moment. They've beaten Australia away. They drew a series with England away. So we beat them at home, and they were actually they were relatively confident they were actually going to beat us, but that didn't happen. But then we went to New Zealand where we drew a series in the test matches. Then we went to England where we lost the series after winning the first test match. And now the recently concluded test match versus Australia, where we really had a terrible performance. We made 150 in the first innings and didn't make 100 runs in the second innings. And this was on quite a tricky pitch. The Australians also actually, struggled a bit. There's only really 2 of their batsmen or batters made runs, Travis Head and Steve Smith. So it was actually difficult for everybody, but still, it's simply not good enough for a team to make 250 runs across 2 innings. So,
but I was about to say, speaking about that, perhaps that era of the South African cricketing game has come under a lot of scrutiny as of late. Our batting performance, one particular character, coming ahead in terms of being in the talk about his own performance is now I forget his name, that short chap.
Themba Bavuma.
Bavuma, coming under quite a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism. What's going on in that batting, dude?
So also with Temba Bavuma, how can I describe it? He had quite a poor T20 World Cup where he was captain, but he shouldn't be playing in the white ball side. He should definitely be. He's doing well in the Test side. He's actually probably our best batsman in the Test side. But that all said, he's played 50 Test matches and he's only made 1 century. And if you follow cricket, you'll know that a batsman needs to, if he's played 50 Tests, he needs to have made more than 1 century. So while Temba Bavuma is definitely at the moment our best batsman, he has had 50 Test matches. He still only averages low 30s. And you've got to ask whether any other batsman would have been given that many Test matches to find their feet in Test cricket. Because, as I say, he's easily now our most dependable batsman, but he's also had 50 Test matches to find his feet at international level. And I'm not sure how many people would have got as many opportunities as Temba Bavuma has. And he also needs to start making centuries. I mean, that's the job of batsman is to make centuries. And Temba Bavuma's only made 1, and that was over 5 years ago. It was also on a flat pitch in Cape Town when we drew a Test match against England. So, but as I was talking about the show, there's also lots of issues around transformation and so on in the Proteas. We've obviously the Springboks, that's always a comparison. They seem to have managed these issues pretty well. The team's pretty transformed. Nobody says there's talks about things like quota players, and obviously the sports are a bit different. But all that said, I think the Proteas, I would say everybody there is there on merit. I'd say it's a transformed team. And also, as I say, I mean, there's nobody that you would call a quota player. Maybe some people would raise questions over somebody like Kaya Zondo, maybe he shouldn't be in the team. But you know what? The guy was making tons of runs and he forced his own team on performance in domestic cricket, and you've got to give the guy kudos for that. But the issue is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, because I think you're unpacking the nub of what I wanted to have a conversation about tonight, which is, unfortunately, when you talk about South African sports, you have to bring in the politics, because politicians have made it their game to interfere in politicians, as our politicians do in this country, where every and all facets of society, they need to get their grubby fingers in it. Unfortunately, Marius, it can have a good, bad, or ugly outcome. And the transformation issue is perhaps one of those issues where you see that ideological difference, Marius, between maybe, let's say you and I, as classical liberals, to the orthodox community, the sort of trendy lefty analyst voices and really political elites in this country, who that difference is basically here, and I'll let you talk to it, where you and I would look at diversity as effectively merit-based. The best person for the job, whether black, white, Indian, colored, irrelevant. Put that person on the team, and insofar as wanting to give those who didn't have opportunities in the past, you then develop the structures that aid them to get to the top. That's how you and I would approach transformation, that buzzword, which I don't like, but we'll use it for the sake of this conversation, versus what the orthodox or the mainstream basically views as transformation, which is quotas. The idea that if the country is 90% black, then it should have, every structure of society should have 90% black people, X% whites, X% colored, and the like, which effectively is a band-aid that then creates that tension. Marius, we spoke about an article that you and I saw this week, where there is this tension within Cricket South Africa and the players at the moment. Talk to me about this, and of course these two approaches.
Yeah, so article came out earlier this week that a lot of players are quite, that there's a lack of communication from the selectors and so on. And guys just want to get told the truth. If they haven't been picked, they want to be told, is it cricketing reasons or transformation reasons? I think a lot of guys who, they're aware of the environment, and, they the kind of like, dictats that come from Cricket South Africa. And if a guy gets told, look, you were close to making it, but we had to go with a player of colour. Probably a lot of guys wouldn't like it, but they'd at least understand it, and they'd be, at least getting Cricket South Africa and the selectors are being honest with the guys. But I think cricket is it's a good microcosm of transformation and actually sort of things like broad-based black economic empowerment and so on. BE and all that kind of thing, it only helps the elites, as you're saying. And that's exactly what happens when you have quotas in a team like the Proteas. We can say, 5 of the players must be black, or 7 must be black, or whatever the case is, which is all fine. But all it is helping the elites. As we were saying before the show, players who are playing for South Africa, it doesn't matter what color you are, they are nearly all of them come from privileged backgrounds. Kai Zondo, who I mentioned earlier, his father's Raymond Zondo, the Chief Justice. That guy obviously grew up privileged. Same with Kagiso Rabado. Winston Stadium's dad is a lawyer. Dad's a doctor, mother's a lawyer. Lungi Ngidi, he comes from poor background, but he went to Hilton on a sports scholarship. And that's obviously one of the most expensive and elite schools in South Africa. But true transformation is actually making sure that anybody who wants to play whatever sport, whether it's cricket or rugby or soccer, or whatever the case is, has the opportunity to do so. And in South Africa, that is not the case. Something like only 10% of South African government schools have cricket facilities. Even fewer have access to like pools and athletics tracks and all that kind of thing. And obviously, cricket is an expensive game. I mean, just your basic kit's probably going to set you back 2,000 or 3,000 rand, and this is like entry level stuff. So and obviously, a lot of people can't even afford. A lot of people don't even earn that a month. Never mind, you can go buy whole cricket kits and whatever. But I think that is the nub of the issue. So we talk about transformation, but all it's doing is tinkering at the top, making sure that there's black faces in boardrooms and in the proteas and so on. And we're going to talk about the necessity of that, but it's not actually helping an ordinary black South Africans. As I say, making sure that there's X amount of black players in the proteas does not mean that a guy who's living in Khayelitsha or in Davidson, Jan Gauteng, whatever the case is, that's not going to help them be able to play cricket. It's not going to give them kit. It's not going to give them a place where they can play the game. So it's all just, as I say, it's tinkering.
Let's talk to this. Let's talk to this, because I think it's the nub of the issue. When we then sort of move away perhaps from sport for a moment and look at the broad application of what is that, I sort of termed it the orthodox or mainstream view of transformation. Sorry, again, I must reiterate, I hate that word because of what it has exemplified in this country, which is exactly what you spoke about, Marius. This idea, it's almost patronizing and superficial. This idea that as long as you see brown skin or a few brown faces, then things have transformed. Whereas in real terms, it hasn't, insofar as the substantive nature of something. So that you also then have a problem, Marius, where policies from the ANC government, which the current administration and even this newly elected ANC administration are arguing they'll persist with, such as Black economic empowerment, affirmative action, and the like, are policies that often, if we're really going to be honest, benefit Black elites. That is, those Black South Africans who have close proximity to the political elites in this country or politicians. They tend to be the perpetual beneficiaries, for instance, of BEE deals at the expense of ordinary Black folk. That poor chap who lives in a shack on a sand dune in Cape Town is not going to be the beneficiary of a mega contract from Eskom or the like. And we're seeing an inequality since the left love talking about inequality. The one inequality they don't talk about, the racial inequality, is within the Black community.
Yeah, if you look at figures from Stats SA itself, if you break down inequality using the Gini coefficient within race groups, the most unequal race group in South Africa is Black South Africans within the race group. White South Africans, colored South Africans, Indian South Africans all have lower levels of inequality within that particular group than Black South Africans. So, and also, I mean, if you look at the various policies, BE and whatever I mean, it's something that a lot of people say. You've got to look at the outcome of the policy, what it actually results in, not what you want it to result in. And we've seen, unemployment is sky high, poverty is, the ANC did do it, like we got to give kudos to the ANC. It did a good job in reducing it in the 2000s and rolling out services and so on. But poverty now, it's on the rise again. People aren't, there's service delivery is collapsing and all this kind of thing. And part of it is because the economy is in the state it's in, and it's in the state it's in because of these kinds of policies, such as BE and all that kind of thing. These policies simply aren't working. If they were working, we'd see there wouldn't be these high levels of unemployment and so on. And just on the issue of transformation, I'm pro radical economic transformation, but not the kind of radical economic transformation that the ANC talks about. Radical economic transformation where people have jobs, where businesses are being created, where people are getting richer, more taxes are getting paid, so that service can be rolled out to people who haven't had them, and people can get opportunities that they were denied in the past and so on.
That's right.
That is radical economic transformation, not radical economic transformation that ANC talked about, where the state is involved more and more in the economy. And we've seen what happens. It's I mean,
I can tell you now.
We can talk about something like ESCOM, you know. So
let's talk to that for a second as we wrap up this segment. That's perhaps one of the sticking points and the sore points, which is seeing the ANC lose favor amongst ordinary South Africans who are basically doing exactly what you're talking about, Marius. Ever increasingly, the South African voter is judging politicians and the ANC by the outcomes of their ideas and policies and less by the intentions of the policy. That honeymoon period of judging policy by intention is clearly on its way out if you look at the electoral results. And I use that expression as a segue to our next topic, because we're going to look at by-election results over 2022. I know you're going to unpack that for us for a moment. Before we get there, let's finish this section. You now have that ordinary, on this show, Marius, I like to talk about the average South African as being a faith, flag, family, and freedom type South African. They're not really invested in the politics of the country. They just are interested in the family level. As the ubaba, the dad of the family, am I providing for my family? Am I protecting it? Am I making sure my wife and my kids have a better prospect, better shot at a future in South Africa? The kids, education, healthcare, safety in a neighborhood. These are basic everyday issues to which, as I said at the beginning of the sentence, we're judging politicians by the outcomes and not the intentions anymore.
I think that's exactly it. And people are seeing, the ANC talks about all these noble outcomes. They want things like NHI. Obviously, everybody wants NHI. If you look at it just at face value, this will apparently give everybody excellent healthcare. But we know that's not the case. It'll destroy healthcare decent healthcare for the people that do have it. And I think a lot of people realize that. And I think we've, as you say, like a lot of people scales are falling off a lot of people's eyes. And I mean, we're going to talk about that in the next section where about by-election results and so on. So yeah, I think things are changing in South Africa, and it's quite an exciting time at the moment, I think.
And perhaps that is a beautiful segue to that next topic I want us to chew on tonight. And before I just do that, a bit of housekeeping. Welcome to it. This is the Big Daddy Liberty Show. My name is Usihle Ngobes, aka Big Daddy Liberty. I'm in conversation with, of course, Marius Roodt. There you go. You see him over there next to me. Marius, of course, is a contributor to the Daily Friend, www.dailyfriend.co.za. Sorry, I'm holding back a sneeze. Oh, my bad. That was very difficult getting that out. Marius Roodt, of course, from the Daily Friend, dailyfriend.co.za. They're taking a bit of a hiatus at the moment because it is the end of the year. But as Sarah explained yesterday, they are still putting out articles every day, and they'll be back on your screens next year in January. Hit that like button and, of course, hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. This is the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Marius, we have to talk about by-elections. It's been an interesting year when it comes to by-elections. And how we're going to break the segment down is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Or correction, winners and losers is how we're going to break it down. Let's begin with the winners. There are some opposition parties which are smiling ear to ear.
So I'd say the winners, there haven't really been any big winners, but I'd say the winners overall are probably the IFP and then to a lesser degree the DA and the EFF. The IFP has done really well in by-elections over the last year, and it's starting to do pretty well in Southern KwaZulu-Natal, which always was kind of ANC territory. Now it's starting to pick up votes in the southern part of the province, and I think that's a big warning for the ANC. The DA has also done pretty well. It's managed to take off a couple of seats from other opposition parties. It governs some of the seats that are won, for example, in Prince Albert, in the Western Cape. Also, I think the place that's named for the Cedarburg is also in the Western Cape. Because of the DA's performance there, it manages to govern either alone or with opposition parties, managing to keep the ANC out. And the EFF also actually hasn't done too badly. It's won a couple of seats off the ANC, and it did pretty well in a by-election that was held now in Ditsobotla, which is in the northwest. There was a whole by-election held for the entire municipality, and the ANC did very badly. It used to get nearly 3/4 of the votes in that municipality. In the 2011 election, I think got nearly 75% of the vote. In this by-election for the whole municipality, it barely got 40% of the vote. So out of the 39 seats on the municipal council, the ANC won 16, the EFF won 10, and the DA won 6. And then the rest of the votes were split between other various small opposition parties. So I think but it's also, sorry, carry on.
Now, as much as before we get into the analysis of it, because I think this segment, or that breakdown you gave us, lends itself to answering the question: are we seeing any trends in this? Does it bode any way, one way or the other, for 2024? We'll get to that in a moment, because I want us to look at the loser, therefore, because I think there's something to be said about the ANC's performance generally in by-elections. There is a precipitous decline for this party, and they themselves, by the way, Marius, have spoken about it at this recent ANC elective conference when Cyril Ramaphosa was giving his report to the plenary, basically make mention of it in no sugar-coated terms. The ANC is in decline, and this very well could be an ANC that is preparing for opposition. Do these by-elections lend themselves to that analysis?
Yeah, to a degree, but with all these kinds of things, it's a little bit more complicated than just the story of ANC decline. Overall, if you take the aggregate vote in these by-elections, the ANC has seen a decline, but only about 2 or 3 percentage points. And in some by-elections, the ANC has actually gone up. There were also 5 by-elections held in Mkondo last week on the same day as the Ditsobotla by-election. Mkondo is Pitwatif. 5 because 5 ANC councillors were expelled from the party for voting against the instructions of the party, whatever the case was. I'm not sure the background. But anyway, the ANC, they won all those 5 seats. In some of them, the ANC vote share actually went up. So I think it's a mixed story now across the country. So in the cities, the ANC is really bleeding votes. In places like KwaZulu-Natal, it's bleeding votes. Northwest now it's also. But I think in a lot of the rural parts of South Africa, especially Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga, rural Limpopo, the ANC is still, it's the party that people vote for. Like some of these by-elections, the ANC is still getting 60 or 70% of votes, even 80% sometimes. So the ANC is definitely becoming more of a rural party. But I mean, this is the kind of trend we've been seeing now for a while. I mean, in the last municipal election, in only 2 of the 8 metros did more than 50% of the people vote for the ANC. In places like Johannesburg, not even a third of voters voted for the ANC. And this was a place where the ANC used to get 60% of the vote. So right. I think we're seeing, I mean, this is kind of the trend that we've seen with a party like ZANU-PF as well, North Limpopo, where it's increasingly becoming a rural party. And our ex-colleague and ex-boss, France Cornet, he said this was going to happen to the ANC. As more people went to the cities, younger people, better educated people, people on higher incomes aren't going to vote for the ANC. And generally, these are people who live in the cities, younger people and people who are better educated and so on. And people in rural areas carry on voting for the ANC. To a large degree, but there's also, as I said, it's quite complicated.
Now, I was about to say, maybe to that point, 2 more questions before we wrap up. Even as we talk about the winners and the losers, it's a catch-22, it's a double-edged sword, because for as much as the ANC is losing, in some places, as you mentioned, the party in the ascendancy is a party I would consider to be basically a faction of the ANC, albeit they're different, which is the EFF. The red in tooth and claw communist party in this country, where, as we've seen, Julius Malema is a completely unreliable coalition partner or even voting partner insofar as he changes with the wind. And if anything, what I would want you to talk to is, how does that bode for 2024? As the ANC loses support, do you think it comes hat in hand to the EFF, which then gives it that supplementary percentage of voting voting share in order to stay in power?
No, actually, I don't think it's a done thing that the ANC would go to the EFF. I think it all depends how much the ANC goes under 50% in 2024. And look, it's also possible that the ANC won't even go under 50%. It might, it's definitely going to lose votes in 2024, but it could still get 51, 52% of the votes. But I reckon I'd say now, if you had to put a gun to my head and said, what do you think is going to happen? I reckon the ANC is going to be at about 47, 48% of the votes in 2024. And I think then they're going to go to these other smaller parties, Al Jamaah or Good or whatever the case is. I don't think they're going to go to the EFF. And also that's, if the ANC is sitting on 35 or 40%, then I think that changes the equation. Then I think it is possible that the ANC could go to the EFF. We've already seen that the ANC and the EFF, the ANC also struggles to work with the EFF. There was, where I stay in Ekurhuleni, there was apparently a deal where there was going to be an EFF mayor and the ANC was going to support the EFF mayor, but this deal fell apart and now we still have a DA mayor in Ekurhuleni. But also at the same time, while the EFF has done okay in these by-elections, it's a mixed bag for them. For a lot of these places, they've been nowhere. I mean, there was one by-election where the EFF got, I think, only 2 votes. And so there's probably the candidates and maybe his mom that voted for him. I'm not too sure. But and even if we look at the trends from 2021, while the EFF did pretty well, increased vote share in places like KwaZulu-Natal and so on, it went backwards in Johannesburg and Tshwane. It went backwards in its strongholds, places like Rustenburg and Polokwane, where Julius Malema is from. In the 2016 local government election, the EFF had won 30% Polokwane. In last year's local government election, it won 20%. It lost 10 percentage points. So it's not a done deal that people are going to run to the EFF. And I think a lot of people also disillusioned with the EFF, people who would have supported it, and with Julius Malema and their antics in Parliament and so on. And a lot of people, I think, they found the way they act quite disrespectful. And in South Africa, I think respect's a big thing, and people don't like, they might not like the ANC, but they do think there's still an element of respect that the party needs. Maybe I don't quite agree with that, but maybe people would disagree with that. So yeah.
There's something you said which I want us to unpack in the last 3 minutes that we have. KZN is going to be a make or break province in the upcoming election. I've been taunting the ANC perhaps this whole week, especially the KZN ANC, who have just received insane bats from their own colleagues at this ANC conference, which is scary country for them, or scary territory for them, because they're facing the headwinds of a marching three elephants stampede in KZN. Three elephants, of course, being the symbol of the IFP. They're facing a drubbing by the IFP. But here's the thing, and this is the thing that a lot of people are fearing, and I want you to talk to it. You mentioned the fact that the EFF has a relatively decent showing, especially in eThekwini as the region here in KZN. Is there a prospect of an EFF-ANC coalition? I mean, they recently had talks between those two parties.
Yeah, look, I also don't think in KwaZulu-Natal, I don't think that's going to happen. As I said, I just think the EFF and the ANC, I don't think they're going to work that well together. And I think also EFF supporters.
EFF and IFP.
Yeah, right. Sorry. Yeah, I think that is actually quite a good, strong possibility. And that's the thing. Any kind of coalition in KwaZulu-Natal and probably Gauteng as well, it's going to probably need the EFF, whether in a formal coalition or kind of a confidence and supply kind of movement. And what? I'm not obviously the greatest fan of the EFF, but if you need them to keep the ANC out, then I think, but it's also kind of like riding a tiger, and ride it and eventually it'll throw you off and eat you. So that's from the kind of EFF. But I think, but the ANC, I think, is in huge trouble in KwaZulu-Natal, and I think part of it is because KwaZulu-Natal kind of faction of the ANC's got a drubbing. We saw the KwaZulu-Natal, apart from the Western Cape, was always the ANC's worst province, historically speaking, electoral terms. But when Jacob Zuma became president, a lot of people in KwaZulu-Natal started voting for the ANC. But so in 2014, the ANC got 64% of the votes in KwaZulu-Natal. In 2019, lost 10 percentage points down to 54%. And I think that was its third worst province after the Western Cape and Gauteng. And I think we're probably going to see another 10 percentage points, maybe even more, decline for the ANC. I don't think it's impossible they will see the ANC on about 40% in the provincial election in 2024. And then we're probably going to see an IFP, DA, EFF coalition, maybe, who knows, maybe some other parties. So it's going to be, it's going to be interesting times.
It's going to be interesting times.
We've also seen the IFP and the DA deciding to work together in KwaZulu-Natal. And just on the issue of by-elections, there was a by-election last week in Nkomazi, where it was an ANC seat. The council was actually murdered by two policemen, so there had to be a by-election. But the IFP and the DA decided to work together, and the DA said, we're not going to run a candidate here. We're going to encourage our voters to vote for the IFP candidate. And that's what they did. And the IFP managed to win that seat. And it's apparently the first time in eThekwini that the IFP has won award in eThekwini, that's where which doesn't have a lot of hostels and so on. First time it's kind of a suburban ward that's the IFP has won. So I think the ANC is in huge trouble because of themselves.
Absolutely, Marius. We have to cap it off there. That is, of course, Marius Roodt from the Daily Friend publication, dailyfriend.co.za, also our friends at the IRR. Marius, I'm going to give you a final word on this, just generally, on the issue of your perceived where things are heading nationally next, in 2024 in terms of results. Just a final word.
Yeah, look, I think we're going to see the ANC doing pretty badly, but I think then I don't see them getting 35 or 40%. I think they're still going to be around about 48% or so. But they're definitely going to. I think we're going to see coalition governments in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, maybe the Northern Cape, and I think the DA is looking pretty good. I think we can see the DA at about 25%. The EFF's, I think they'll see an increase in votes, but they're also not going to, I think the EFF's pretty much at its ceiling. It'll be, I would say 15% is probably tops. But I think the two other parties to watch then are also the IFP and, to a less degree, the Freedom Front Plus. So, yeah, but I think the IFP is definitely, 15 years ago, people were writing the parties obituary, but I think it's definitely in the last couple of years, it's starting to come back. But it's as the Chinese curse goes, may live in interesting times, and I think we are at the moment.
That's right. That, of course, is Marius Roodt, as I said, from the Daily Friend. Big thank you to brother Marius as he hops off screen there. And thank you for watching this installment of the BDL Show. Guys, I hope you're enjoying these shows that I'm doing on a daily basis. As I said, I am only doing it for this, what is the final week of me being on your screens. I'll see you again in January, sort of after the first week or so of January. I'll let you know all of that tomorrow in the final episode of the BDL Show. That being said, a reminder to you, hey man, do me a favor, hit that like button. It's all you need to do, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter. And if you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, please. Become a family, part of the BDL family. Speaking about becoming part of the BDL family, join the BDL Club. I think I've informally named it that at this stage. People who are financially supporting the show with between 50 and 100 Rand. There's various payment methods on the website. That's bigdaddyliberty.com. With that being said, thanks for watching. Enjoy this evening. And remember, as I always say at the end of every show, never trust a commie.